Firstly, I've said from the get-go that the supercycle theory is based on those that are marketing passive portfolios. What drives commodities is cycles of supply disruption. That has not changed, and that will continue going forward. All the boats do not necessarily go up with the tide when it comes to commodities. So it's supply disruption cycles that I advocate.
Well, if you think about during the commodity super cycle, which is pretty much the last 10 years, on average, when global GDP growth was 3.5%, commodities broke even. When it was 1.5% higher, commodities made 20%. When it was 1.5% lower, commodities lost 20%. As opposed to before the super cycle, in the 40 years before the super cycle, when global GDP growth was around 3.5%, commodities broke even. When it was 1.5% higher, commodities made 20%. When it was 1.5% lower, commodities lost 20%. So I'm not sure I buy the whole commodity super cycle. It just seems to me that it's the cycle.
I think it depends on what they mean by commodity super cycle. If they mean all commodity prices rising, then yes, we're at the end of that. But if it means we're in a range of higher prices overall across the sphere, across commodities as a whole, where we'll see individual prices moving according to fundamentals, I think that will still remain the case.
The commodity supercycle is an interesting one because if you look at the genesis of what drove the commodity supercycle, I think it's really the emergence of Asia coming out as a big consumer, particularly all of that investment being done in China over that last decade. Now that is slowing down, so certainly commodity prices have slowed down. It's not being so much demand-led, and indeed, I think what you've seen in the last few years is supply catching up. So in terms of the impact on prices, that has been moderating it. And in terms of a super cycle on prices, I would say it's not going to be seen for another couple of years.
The term super cycle is one that needs to be properly defined. I think certain economists or strategists need to stop using the word super cycle because it denotes something that's coming to an abrupt end. I believe that what's going on in the world is convergence of economic standards between the developed world and the developing world, underpinned by megatrends. So rather than calling something a super cycle, we kind of have normal business cycles around megatrends, which is urbanization, population growth, rising incomes, and changing demographics.